So that leaves us with the Big 12.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Tyler, who's your surprising team?
Surprising team for me. I'm really high on this team. Have been on all off season. Will not surprise me if this team ends up playing in Arlington come December, and that's the Kansas State Wildcats. They've got veteran leadership returning at some very, very key positions on this team. Adrian Martinez, transfer quarterback from Nebraska. I think we're going to find out pretty quick if it was Adrian Martinez or Nebraska that was the problem up there in Lincoln. So combine him, a great compliment to Deuce Vaughn, that Wildcat rushing attack. Seniors at the wide receiver and tight end positions, 4 of the 5 starting offensive linemen coming back. And then, guys, something to keep an eye on. We played against this guy 4 times. Colin Klein is actually now serving as the offensive coordinator up in Manhattan, coming off of a pretty impressive 42-20 performance with Kansas State beating LSU in a bowl game last year. So I'm very, very high on Kansas State, and probably the biggest reason out of all this, and Adam, I'm curious to get your thoughts because I know you like Kansas State as well. It's a tricky schedule. You've got Baylor and Oklahoma on the road, but you do get Oklahoma State and Texas in back-to-back weeks in Manhattan. But guys, as I started diving further into this schedule, the Big 12 scheduling department took care of Chris Kleiman this year in a major, major way because every good team that they play in their conference is coming off of a massive game the week before. They play Oklahoma the week after OU goes to Nebraska. They play TCU the week after they face Texas. They play Texas the week after the Longhorns go to Stillwater, and they play Baylor the week after the Bears come to Norman. So very, very favorable schedule for Kansas State this year. Watch out for Chris Kleiman's group.
I liked K-State, but I just could not get over the fact that Adrian Martinez, I don't think, is an upgrade over Skylar Thompson. And I know Skylar Thompson missed a few games here and there with injuries, but that's Adrian Martinez as well. So as much as I like the Wildcats and want to pick them, I just can't get on board with Adrian Martinez right now. So for that reason, my most surprising team, I'm going to go with Texas Tech, another team that I think almost everybody automatically puts at 9th there, but they do have Tyler Shuck coming back off of injury. Or if you go with Donovan Smith, who was a freshman last year, but showed some potential at the end of the season once they finally moved away from Henry Colombi. I think that there's some options at quarterback there for the Red Raiders. And I do think that Joey McGuire, the new coach there, has some similarities to Brent Venables in the fact that he's going to absolutely squeeze the absolute most potential out of that particular team. So 7-8 wins might be good enough to consider that a surprise.
My surprise team, guys, is TCU. Again, I do understand, Tyler, what you're saying about K-State. I think the trips to Norman and to Waco, it's pretty tough. And TCU feels like a program similar to what we've talked about, like a Florida State. In the past, we've discussed about a Florida, where there's so much talent in that DFW area. Like at some point, they're going to turn it around. And my honest opinion is if they don't do it here in the next 2 to 3 years, it's possible this program gets forgotten as a whole. As conference realignment continues to shift. So I think now is the time for TCU and Sonny Dykes to make a statement that they can be players in a conference. I think they need that. They host Oklahoma. They host Oklahoma State. They host K-State. If K-State is this, surprise team, they host them. Yes, on the road at Baylor, on the road at Texas. There's not necessarily, I think, a schedule that outside of K-State that really favors somebody, but this one's pretty close. So I'm going to go TCU for the surprising team. Quickly shifting to my disappointing team. It's got to be Baylor, right? I mean, like they have to be a small drawback. You look at, I know this is out of conference, but you go at BYU, they're going to get beat up there. They may still come out of there with a win, but they're going to get beat up early in the season. At Iowa State, at Tech, at Oklahoma, at Texas. That's tough. I'm not saying that this team isn't good enough to go in and win enough games to make it to Arlington, but I just think this top 10 Baylor program is probably a bit too high for my liking. I see them probably closer to 15-20. So not necessarily a huge disappointment, but at least I think going from a conference champion winner to where they might fall this year, a little bit of a step back.
Adam, does Baylor feel like this year's version of Iowa State that has Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, so much hype around them coming back? Does it feel like Baylor's kind of falling under that same category where Baylor's not going to sneak up on anybody this year and beat them? Everybody's going to have their full attention.
It's everybody's darling in the Big 12 to say, oh, we got this new shiny toy and we love this coach. He's so great. Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
feels the same way. And I actually had Baylor as my most disappointing team as well. Maybe
Wow.
against better judgment, because here's the difference between this year's Baylor team and last year's Iowa State team. Iowa State did have a ton of starters coming back from that team, but their main headliners were skill guys. Baylor's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
opposite: offense,
Mm-hmm.
defensive line. So that's usually the sign of a really good team. But as Corbin pointed out, they're on the road against the three teams that probably have the talent advantage on them: Oklahoma, Texas, and BYU is probably debatable. They also have a road trip to West Virginia, and that's always going to be tough, no matter how good or bad West Virginia is. So just by nature of that, and it worked for me last year where I said, I'm not picking Iowa State to repeat in the Big 12 championship game. I'm taking the field. I'm doing the same thing with Baylor this year. I think it's so hard to repeat when you
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily have that big talent advantage that OU has enjoyed over those teams in the Big 12. So anything short of the Big 12 championship is a disappointment for the Bears coming into this year. So could be 2-3 losses and they don't make it, and that's all it is. Still a good year for Baylor, but disappointing nonetheless.
Yeah, I guess I took this out of context. Maybe we should have defined some of the parameters when talking about what is the most disappointing team, because for this one, I've actually got West Virginia, simply because of the fact that I feel like that fan base, there's kind of been some, it's kind of been reinvigorated by getting JT Daniels, transfer quarterback, in from Georgia. They've got 5 starters on the offensive line returning. Neil Brown, it kind of feels like there were so much high expectations. There was a lot of reason for optimistic once he came into West Virginia. First 3 seasons at West Virginia, Mountaineers have finished 9th, 8th, and 10th in the Big 12 Conference. So really it's kind of put up or shut up time for me. They are replacing 8 starters on the defensive side of the football. So I think that while there is a lot of optimism because JT Daniels and that West Virginia offense is supposed to be really, really good this year, you look at their schedule. Yes, they get OU, Kansas State, and Baylor at home, but I still don't expect anything different from West Virginia this year when expectations are a little bit higher for Mountaineers fans. And guys, I'll kind of transition here. When talking about Baylor, I'm going to give my I'm going to give my conference championship matchup. But first, actually, hang on. I want to touch on 2 teams here with you guys because I want to. This isn't actually scripted, but I want to talk about Texas a little bit. Expectations: is Texas back? Sark year 2. B. John's back. Quinn Ewers, the Antichrist. God save the Queen. He's our savior. What are our thoughts on Texas this year? Same stuff, different year, or?
It's interesting how expectations are already being lowered 2 weeks into fall camp. Obviously, they've had some key injuries and some bad practice reports as far as where that offense is, and especially where the offensive line is. So, yeah, I can't be a buyer in Texas right now.
Does Hudson Card play the first 2 games of the year?
That is exactly where I was leading
and
to.
We
this.
never see him again.
Why in the world,
if you're Sarkisian, you're not beating Bama. You're not.
No.
It doesn't matter. You're not. Even at your A+ game, you're not beating Alabama. So why put Quinn Ewers in that situation?
Yes.
I think you start Hudson Card, let him beat Louisiana Monroe, let him get smacked around by Alabama, and that gives you every authority to put in Quinn Ewers. You know the fan base is going to be asking for it anyway. And if you look at the schedule from there, UTSA at Tech, West Virginia at home. 3 very winnable games if Texas plays up to its talent.
Mm-hmm.
Let Quinn Ewers get settled, and then obviously you go down the stretch of Oklahoma, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, K-State. To me, it's a no-brainer. That's how this plays out. With the asterisk, Texas also played LSU really close. National champion LSU, who we think was probably one of the best teams that we've seen in the past X amount of years. What if Hudson Card makes it a game? What if he challenges Bama? Then what do you do? So I don't know. All this is a big mystery.
There was a lot of reason for concern in Austin with the offensive line. They were thinking that they were probably, even with a healthy left guard and junior Angulo, which I apologize if I mispronounced that. Obviously, news came out over the weekend. He tore his ACL in the scrimmage. Chances are he was going to be their most decorated, their best player on the offensive line. So I think there's probably a realistic chance you're for sure starting 2, maybe even 3 true freshmen. I don't see any scenario in which Hudson Card doesn't start the first game of the year. Louisiana Monroe, Texas has enough talent alone to take care of them. Hype train, Bama's going to be rolling in there. With 3 freshmen on the offensive line, you are 1,000% throwing Hudson Card to the Wolves in that one. Will Anderson against a freshman left tackle. Oh my God, I would not want to be that. I would not want to be Hudson Card. But like you said, Corbin, they're going to use that as an opportunity. Okay, Quinn Ewers, your time. You're the savior. Take us home the rest of the way. I think that it's going to play out exactly how you said. On paper, this team has enough talent to win 9 to 10 games, but culture, injury bug. I think this could be another 7-5, 8-4 year in Austin. And guys, we didn't put this on the script, but I do want to kind of get a prediction here on Oklahoma, what the record is going to be for this.
Oh,
which y'all can.
we're saving that for.
Are we saving that for
later
next
week,
year?
right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. We'll
saving
save
for a
that.
different week. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's go to Big 12 championship predictions here. I've got Oklahoma going up against Baylor. Baylor, you hit the nail on the head, Adam. 4 fifth-year seniors returning on the offensive line. Ton of skill talent to replace. What do we really make of Blake Shapen? Yes, looked fantastic in the Big 12 championship game a year ago. Looked good in the bowl game, but still kind of young, still kind of unproven. We'll see how he goes over the course of a full season. On defense, you've got to replace Jalen Petrie, probably one of the best defensive players in Big 12 conference in recent history. You've got to replace Terrell Bernard, a few other guys, but I know Dave Aranda is going to figure things out. They've got a really good defensive line coming back as well. Early season road games at BYU and Iowa State could trip them up in September. But, guys, I'm looking at that closing 4-game stretch that the Bears are going to have to deal with at Oklahoma, Kansas State, TCU, both in Waco, and then on the road in Austin to close out the regular season. So I've got Baylor navigating the windy, curvy road that is the Big 12 regular season, and I've got them playing Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game, where Oklahoma and Brent Venables in year 1 are going to win the program's 7th Big 12 championship in 8 years.
I've also got Oklahoma in the conference championship game. We'll have more time to talk about them probably in future weeks here as we lead up to the season. I had a tough time settling on a team that would match up against OU, simply based off of my rule of I'm going to take the field instead of Baylor here. And so I ended up landing on Oklahoma State. The Cowboys return a lot of starters on offense. We talk about Spencer Sanders, Tyler's favorite quarterback. He is what he is. I think Braylon Presley steps up as their lead receiver, who's pretty solid as a younger player last year. And then Dominic Richardson at running back can probably produce similar to what Jalen Warren did last year. It's the defensive side of the ball that's more of a question mark. You lost Jim Knowles to Ohio State. Derek Mason comes over from Auburn, probably overqualified to be the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma State. And he's actually running Jim Knowles' scheme, which I guess is good. But I almost don't like that very much when a new guy comes in, tries to run someone else's scheme just for consistency. So that's kind of intriguing. But yeah, that's why I'm going with Cowboys. I think they were a really solid team last year, and they return a lot of those pieces, especially offensively. I just couldn't get behind Texas with injuries, and no one else really truly stood out. So I got a Bedlam rematch in Arlington, and OU taking the win there.
I've got the same exact matchup with the same exact outcome, and I agree with you, Adam. I don't love the pick, but Baylor's schedule seems too tough. But then I look at Oklahoma State's, and they're going at Baylor, at TCU, at K-State, at Oklahoma. Not really that much easier. So I'm
They're
just
not
kind of
conference
going.
either.
Central Michigan,
too.
Central Michigan, Arizona State, Arkansas, Pine Bluff. I don't know. I've seen tougher.
Yeah.
If this team's the 12th ranked team in the nation, they should handle all 3 of those teams pretty easy.
Fair.
But at some point, I think you got to go with the quarterback who you may not love, but at least you know. And that's what we do know in Spencer Sanders. First
we know
team
exactly
in 12,
who he is.
Spencer Sanders, at Tyler. And so I think that quarterback play goes a long way. You saw the worst of the worst in Spencer Sanders in that Baylor game last year, and they still almost won the game. So I know they lost a lot on the defensive side of the ball, but I do think it's a Bedlam rematch in Arlington to end the year with OU ending up on top. Guys, let's transition to Heisman. I'm going to get mine out of the way. I already told you guys you weren't going to like it. Lincoln Riley's offense is going to put up a lot of points. And a lot of points means you've got a quarterback putting up a lot of stats. There is already so much talk and smoke and excitement about Caleb Williams in a USC uniform. I think he just needs to have a pretty good year, and he's going to be in the running. Caleb Williams for Heisman this year.
I think it's funny that I think we had an episode after the TCU game last year where we talked about whether Caleb Williams could win the Heisman in 2021. So
yeah.
I think that's kind of funny. I'm going with CJ Stroud at Ohio State. I think they're in a much better position to be higher ranked, and I think he'll put up just as good, if not better, stats than any other quarterback out there. That offense should absolutely annihilate everyone they go against.
I'm actually kind of go with the curveball here for you guys. This typically isn't a stats-driven award, not in recent years. It typically goes to the best player on one of the best teams at the very end of the season. This kid plays for the Alabama Crimson Tide, and best player on that roster who is not the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. I think that this is finally the season where we see a defensive player win the Heisman Trophy. I'm going to pick Will Anderson. So much hype going into this season. Probably would have been the number 1 overall NFL draft pick if he was eligible a year ago. He's going to be a double-digit sack guy. He might be halfway there after the game in Austin against that line. So yeah, I'm going to go with Will Anderson to win the Heisman Trophy and cap off a big season for Alabama. Adam, give me your 4 playoff teams.
Yeah, interesting one here. We posed this question to Twitter, got a few good responses. At the PG Show had Alabama, Michigan, OU, and Clemson. And then at Sooners, the One had Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. Thought that was interesting. With those 2 responses, no Georgia and no Pac-12 anywhere in the picture, which we're not used to seeing the Pac-12 in the playoffs anyway, so that's not a surprise. But no Georgia is kind of interesting just because everyone has them in their top 4.
Georgia's in, guys.
Well,
I'm going to
side with Twitter. I had Bama.
Wow.
I have Ohio State. I think Georgia gets upset somewhere in the middle of the season and then gets knocked out by Bama in the SEC title game. I'm going OU. And then for that final spot, I was kind of down between, well, do I take the ACC champ? Do I take the Pac-12 champ? Or is there another Big Ten team out there?
Or an independent.
Liberty? No. I went with my Pac-12 champ, Utah. I think they have so many opportunities. They've got Florida to open the year. They've got a tough San Diego State team that's probably going to win the Mountain West potentially. So that's a good non-conference win. And then you've got USC on their schedule. You've got Oregon on their schedule. You've got even at Oregon State might be, if they're the surprising team that Tyler thinks they are, that could be a quality win. So even if Utah drops a game, I think they have opportunities to climb their way back into the rankings.
Go ahead,
Corbin. Okay. Very, very similar to you, Adam, although I do not have Oklahoma in the playoffs. I've got Alabama number 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson coming in at number 3, and I've actually got the Utah Utes representing the Pac-12.
Neither one of you have Georgia.
Neither one. Nope.
National champion Georgia. You guys don't have
I'm with Adam. I think Alabama takes care of them in the SEC championship game, and they get tripped up along the way. And I just don't see. Again, we'll see how it feels in November, but I think Utah has a very, very good chance of running the table this year. Could go undefeated, but I would have a hard time seeing a 1-loss Pac-12 champion Utah that already has the preseason hype. The narrative's already been scripted. I think they get in over a 2-loss Georgia.
Yeah. If that's the case, I would agree with you. I've got Bama, Ohio State, Georgia. And you're going to have to give me an asterisk on this one because I have an or.
A&M.
Last one. Nope. It's the winner of Clemson and Notre Dame. They play each other on the field. The winner of that game is my 4th pick.
Who are you picking to win that game?
I genuinely do not know because I think it's going to be like a defensive battle. I don't see this going over like 25 points on either side.
You would think Notre Dame's going to have to win that game because they go to Ohio State week 1.
Exactly. If you're Notre Dame, you can afford to lose one of them.
For sure.
One.
For sure.
But that's it.
So
and I think that if you were to line up a 1-loss non-champion Notre Dame with a 1-loss Pac-12 champion Utah, that's an easy pick.
So
Notre Dame's in.
Caleb Williams, Heisman Trophy winner, USC Pac-12 champion. Too many losses on the resume to get into that 4 spot?
It's not impossible. But they're going to play each other. Notre Dame and SC are going to play each other. So there's your answer.
Yeah. Plot. Okay.
It sounds like we're using depth chart rules for this. So for my 4th team, I'm going to pick Utah or NC State or Michigan or Georgia.
These 2 teams play on the field. And so I'm saying the winner of this game gets the final playoff spot.
Who's your champion?
I looked at this game. My champion is Bama over Georgia. Rematch of last year. Bama beats Georgia 2 times in the year. That's Georgia's only 2 losses. Feel very confident about that.
Yeah, I got Bama over Georgia.
I have Bama.
Wait, no, you can't have Georgia. You didn't have Georgia in your.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I've got Alabama over Ohio State. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So Tyler and I are the same there. So hopefully,
I hate going chalk, but
yeah,
to me it's Alabama, it's Ohio State, and there's a huge drop off between 2
I don't
and 3.
think it's that huge.
Agreed. Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
North Carolina?
Watch, dude. All I can say is I've got a
Well,
trophy over here.
I was,
I've got a trophy at my place for predictions last year. Nobody else can say the same. It may have taken 8 months for it to get to me.
Scoreboard.
Nonetheless, I have the
There it
trophy.
is.
So
there it is.
let me lose before you start throwing down my picks.
USC, North Carolina, Nebraska, all three. That would be one hell of a parlay. I'd be curious to see what the
It would
payout
be.
is on that.
Let me look it up.
Make sure to follow us on YouTube by searching the Mainline Podcast. It's been amazing to watch Tyler, the body language when Corbin says Nebraska or UNC.
amazing.
So make
So
sure
much
to check us out on
disrespect.
YouTube.
You
and
picked
follow us on
Nebraska to
Twitter.
play in the Big Ten championship. Oh my
Follow
God.
us on
You
Twitter
picked
at the
Purdue.
Mainline Pod. Oh my
That
God,
is
we never
not
get
as
this-
that is not as far fetched as Nebraska is.
Nebraska's at least played in a Big Ten championship.
They've got
Like-
4 straight losing seasons.
Does
Bo
Purdue-
Pelini's is not in Nebraska anymore.
Has Purdue even won like a conference championship in the history of their football program?
Drew
Nope.
Brees.
Well,
So you're complaining about the last 5 years of Nebraska football and the history of Purdue. They don't have a conference championship. It's amazing. This
Wrap
is what
it up,
people
Adam.
tune in for.
Thanks
Get
for
us
listening
outta
to
here.
our podcast. We will see everyone again next week on the Mainline Podcast.